Now, a young Israeli man has been jailed for refusing mandatory service in protest against the war in Gaza. Military service is compulsory for most Jewish Israelis, and in the country's highly militarized society, those who refuse risk being labelled as traitors. Laura Khan reports from occupied East Jerusalem.
Violence won't solve violence. These are the words of Tal Mitnick, an 18-year-old from Tel Aviv, who is believed to be the first person to refuse Israeli military service in protests against the war in Gaza.
I'm in Tel HaShomer military base and I'm refusing to enlist. I refuse to be part of the war in Gaza. I believe slaughter will not solve slaughter.
He left to serve 30 days in prison instead, cheered on by a small but vocal crowd. So who can be called up for service? Well, Israeli Jews, but also minority Druze and Circassian communities are conscripted at the age of 18, men for 32 months and women for 24. In the case of a national emergency or war, most can be recalled in as reservists, and they can be up to the age of 40 or even above. 150,000 people are in active service and 360,000 reservists were called up for the war in Gaza, making it Israel's largest mobilization. Refusing conscription is a criminal offence in Israel and can lead to weeks in prison and a criminal record. Rights groups say the military officer often issues a punishment immediately. Once they're released from jail, they are then called up for service again, and the sentencing process can happen many times, leading to the person spending time in and out of jail. Laura Khan, Al Jazeera, occupied East Jerusalem.
Well, let's bring in now Sofi Orr. Sofi is supposed to enlist in the Israeli army, but is refusing to do so. She joins us from Pardes Hanna in Israel. Good to have you with us. So first of all, let me ask you, why did you take the decision to refuse to enlist?
Well, I made the decision to refuse before the war. I made that decision because I refused to take part in the IDF's violent policies of oppression and apartheid, and to be part of this endless cycle of bloodshed. I choose to refuse because there is no military solution to a political problem, and now with the war that has become more apparent than ever. And so my refusal is more important to me than ever. And I choose to refuse in a very public way, in hope to reach the Israeli society, especially young people, to show them that refusing is an option, and that peace is an option, the only option. Because there are 7 million Palestinians here and 7 million Israeli Jews here, and no one is going anywhere.
Are you worried about how receptive the public will be to your message, given the militarization of society, given the push to the right that's going on?
Indeed, the Israeli society is an extremely militaristic one, and refusing is absolutely not an accepted thing. And I am called a traitor, a self-hating Jew. I get wishes for me to be raped or killed. And since the war started, it has gotten worse. There has been a shift to the right, and the right was already strong. And there also has been repression of activists in the radical left, especially Palestinians with Israeli citizenship, but also Israeli Jews. So I am worried, but it's worth it, because if only one person is going to hear my words and they will make them think, then it's worth it, and I'm willing to endure the consequences of that.
Given everything you've just said and the sort of calls that you're facing, it must take a lot of conviction to take the position you've taken. How concerned are you about the prospect of facing almost an endless cycle of court appearances and jail terms, right? That's what you could be looking at.
I am concerned, of course. It's a scary experience. But I do have the support of the Mesorvot network, which also supports Tal Mitnick, that was just sent to prison. And they accompany us on this process, and it does help a lot. But of course, it's scary, and I don't know how much time, and it can be different now with the war, because the political sphere in Israel has changed and gone in a dramatic shift to the right. But as I said before, I'm concerned, but it is worth it and I stand with my decisions and my morals all the way.
Well, since your decision, of course, that a war has started, and there have been reports by multiple Israeli as well as international human rights groups, been statements by UN experts, 36 in fact, on November the 16th, talking about a genocide in the making going on. Has that strengthened your resolve that this is not something you want to be associated with? And how is that playing out with others?
Definitely for me, the war has only made my decision, made me more sure in my decision. And the war in Gaza is horrible. It causes horrible destruction and death. And it can never be justified the same way that the massacre on October 7th can never be justified. And it's unrelenting and it leads us nowhere. But to most people in Israel, the war changed them in the opposite direction. And there has been a shift to the right, and young people in Israel in general, in contrast to the rest of the world, tend to be more right-wing. So it hasn't really made other people not want to associate themselves with it. And it's why I want to refuse to show them that there are reasons to not want to be associated with the IDF and with that war.
Sophie, how much of the war do Israelis actually see? How much of the civilian suffering do they see?
I think that Israelis know the least about what's going on in Gaza in the entire world. The media in Israel does not show the civilian damage and deaths and destruction. The IDF in general tries to present itself a lot of the time as the most moral army in the world. You can see it on social media because there are Israeli soldiers that post proudly videos from Gaza, horrible videos. So it can be seen, but most people won't see it in mainstream media and also don't want to see it because people want to feel that they are in the right and that they are supporting a right cause and that it's only self-defense and that they don't have a choice. So definitely don't see a lot of it.
Okay, thank you so much, Sofi Orr, for taking the time to come and talk with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.